How are we doing? Good. Welcome. This is First Parish in Northboro, so if you thought you were somewhere else, still time to leave. Welcome. We got a few announcements here today. The art gallery, the artwork is, you should probably try to take a look at that today. It's coming down sometime this week. So a lot of our folks are featured here, and it's just some beautiful stuff. So if you haven't stopped, I should stand in front of the microphone and turn it on. Take a look at that. We also have our regular running protest Monday, 6 to 7 outside around supporting our values and relationship to the administration. So 6 to 7, tomorrow's supposed to be a nice day, unlike most of our Mondays when we seem to be punished for our good works. We had fun going to the art museum in Worcester yesterday, walking around, and it was good. I'd never been there before. So we have community outings. The next one is coming up, I think it's May 21st, and it's an evening one at the Groton Music Center, which is a beautiful venue, and they have these open rooms that you can kind of roam around to, and people just pick up instruments right in Kathleen's wheelhouse, and but you can just go and listen. So that's going to be our next community outing. Let's see. There's the General Assembly trip, which I don't know if that's out in people's mailboxes yet or not, but I've rented a van. I've rented a Verbo house that can have between 7 and maybe 11 people in it, and we can get to GA, and there's probably going to cost you about $1,400 total with registration to go to General Assembly, but I've invited all my churches, so the first 10 or 11 people who, if they want to go, we're going to leave, drive to GA, go to General Assembly, take 1 day in Washington, D.C. sightseeing, and that would be the 19th of June, Thursday morning, and you'd be back Tuesday night, the 24th, I believe it is. So think about whether you want to go to Baltimore and General Assembly with a bunch of other crazy UUs. We're looking at we have a few potential new members, and on the Memorial Day weekend, we're thinking about doing a memorial ceremony, but that, I know that Pam and Jean have been through it. We have some other folks who might be interested in joining. So if you're interested in joining and you're not already a member, you can come see me after church, and we'll see if we can get you through what we have as a little orientation and training. We also have this coming Wednesday, we've got a Dr. Ira Heffend, yes? Oh, you're here. Do you want to come up and make an announcement real quick? I don't want to spoil your thunder. And you can come right to that microphone right there. It's on. I turned it
on. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. Dr. Ira Heffend is a retired emergency room physician. He's really good at telling people bad news, but then telling people what they can do to make it better. So what he will tell us about is the horrible, urgent danger of nuclear war and how it's getting worse. The danger is getting more and more extreme. But then he'll tell us what we can do about it. And he's extremely well-spoken, articulate, and Nobel Peace Prize winner. And he's a terrific person to talk to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Anyone else? Renee had an announcement. You want to rush up here? If we're going to do the announcements, we got to do them efficiently. So if you have one, come on up and we'll do it quick.
Okay, I haven't had a lot of time to think about this, but Memorial Day, we usually have a plant sale. We also have jumping worms in Northboro. So if you know that you are infected, please do not bring plants. We do not want to spread this jumping worm infestation. But I really do need some other ideas to make this a good fundraiser. So I was thinking about possibly a plant sale, but I can't be in charge of two things at once. So I do need some help. Please talk to me at coffee hour or email me, whatever. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Olga? Wow. Well, today's a kind of a take on Jesus it's Palm Sunday today, for all you heathens out there. And I thought that I would have us do a Starhawk call to worship 517 in your orders, in your books, in your hymnals. "517, I'll start. I who am the beauty of the green earth and the white moon among the stars and the mysteries of the waters. For I am the soul of nature that gives life to the universe. Let my worship be in the heart that rejoices, for behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. And you who seek to know me, know that your seeking and yearning will avail you not unless you know the mystery. For behold, I have been with you from the beginning. Chris is going to light our chalice. We light this chalice in dedication to the heroic image we're presented with in Jesus, a man the writers of the Christian story hand us, who had a mix of compassion and courage, a man with wisdom and a sense of prophetic justice. And on Palm Sunday, the day he would have entered and been celebrated as we prepare for Easter, we light that chalice. Even as a 13-year-old, I drove my mother crazy, questioning the connection between our loincloth-clad Jesus and the polished shoes and combed hair I had to pull out for Episcopal Sunday mornings. Come on, Ma, I said, with early scholarly intent. If Jesus can walk around looking like he does, why can't I go to church in sneakers? At my home, like through all the forces of Western history, orthodoxy always won. But not today, not here. I wrote this sermon a while ago, keep editing it. I love it. It speaks to me. It's a love letter, actually. And it's sort of a response to Christian nationalism in our day. I originally drafted the first notes of it at the time when Mel Gibson wrote The Passion of the Christ, so it's had a lot of iterations, but that's what we're going to get today. We're going to get my version of awarding Jesus a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Oscars. That is our theme today. So, please stand as you are willing and are able. Stand in spirit, if not in body, for our opening hymn, 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. 361. Enter, rejoice. rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Boy, that just comes at you like a circus tune, doesn't it? Really moves. Let's find a still spot in our hearts. Shake your body out a little bit. Plant your feet. Do what you do. One of the things Jesus is taught to have discouraged is grandstanding prayer. He says, or is quoted as saying, whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites who love to stand and pray at the street corners so that they might be seen by others. When you pray, Jesus says, go into your room and shut the door. But for us, public prayer, as maybe the oddest people of faith, is hardly an issue. If you're praying to impress people, that's not really us. So Jesus might actually advise us to go pray publicly, because that would be harder. Here's a prayer we might utter publicly. Broad-minded, non-discriminatory spirit we see in fire, spirit we see alive in acts of selfless love. Animate our souls collectively with power and good intentions. Power, good intentions, and love. Breathe fire into our lives to savor this life, and fire to save the lives of others. On this day, we lift up our hearts for rich and poor alike, who've lost their lives, their family, and the security that is so hard to hold in this world. Let us hold in our hearts in an effort to bridge the gap between people who are divided. Let us be a balm and a challenge. Let us be the people the world needs right now. And we'll sit in some silence with that blessing and challenge. Breathe in this space, this beautiful, clean-lined room. Breathe in the history of all the prayers that have been said in this building and the one that stood before it. Shalom. Blessed be. Amen. For anyone who's new, I don't see too many, there's a tradition in this church that we come forward and we share what's on our hearts, hard stuff, good stuff, under the banner of joys and concerns. So I encourage people who would like to speak to come line up and tell us where you're at. And while people do line up, maybe we can go to the folks on Zoom and see if we can hear what's going on. anything to share. Does anyone have anything to share at home? I think not. Okay.
My name is Lise. This is one of the hardest stuff that you're talking about, and it's a stone in silence.
Just came back from the Carolinas for the fourth time this semester. And this was a celebration of my professor's life, and where we are sorely missing models of integrity, reliability. Let me tell you what I learned. I've always said that I got my graduate education for $10,000, and that's true. I was given fellowships throughout my doctorate, and what I've come to understand was Al's salary created those fellowships. He was independently wealthy and only took health insurance from the college. He gave all of his salary over, so not only did he compel me to do a doctorate, something I never saw for myself, not only did he nurture it, not only did he put me up at his home hundreds of times, but he paid for my education. And I got through the song. And at the center, as a wealthy man, he donated a building to the university, right? $1.2 million donation to the university so that the speech language center would all be housed as one. And it was from that office that I resigned my position at Berkeley. I am a free agent as of May 9th.
Morning.
My grandmother told me the secret to a happy marriage is to limit the amount of arguments you have. She told me that if I ever get angry with you, I should just keep quiet and crochet a doll. The little old man was so moved he had to fight back the tears. 2 precious dolls for 60 years of marriage. That explains the dolls, he said, but what about all this $35,000? Where did it come from? She said, oh, that's the money I got from selling the other dolls. Give generously for the life and work of our church and the Metro West Free Medical Cross.
usually, when I come up here and do a reading, I sit over there, and the minister's over here, and it was really strange sitting here. There's some sort of amazing power sitting in that seat. It just sort of overcame me when I sat there. It's unusual. I can understand Steve. Today's reading is called Diamonds to Dunghills. Thomas Jefferson, as many know, had deist and thus Unitarian leanings. In addition to being one of the United States' chief political and intellectual architects, in his spare time, he also rewrote the New Testament with something of a Unitarian or humanist slant, something I did not know until this morning or had forgotten. It was called the Jefferson Bible. Here is one of the things he said about the Gospels. The whole history of these books, referring to the Gospels, is so defective and doubtful that it seems vain to attempt minute inquiry into it. And such tricks have been played with their texts and with the texts of other books relating to them that we have a right, from that cause, to entertain much doubt what parts of them are genuine. In the New Testament, there is internal evidence that parts of it have proceeded from an extraordinary man, and that other parts are from the fabric of very inferior minds. It is easy to separate those parts. It's as easy to separate those parts as it is to pick diamonds from dunghills.
Jesus says in Luke, hanging on the cross, he says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Famous line, right? I believe him regarding a lot of things. Love your neighbor as yourself, turn the other cheek, cross the street to help your friends despite their race or status, class status. But I don't believe him when he says that those who crucified him didn't know what they were doing. They knew, just as I know not to look into the eyes of a beggar, lest I see myself and my responsibility. They knew, just as I know how to get even. They knew, just as I know that the cost of speaking up for the outcast is high. I've lived a different truth, and someday I hope someone will forgive me, or I will learn to forgive myself for not doing better the next time, as he presumably did for us. Choir? Good to have Cindy and Ann back too, right? Olga, will you stand up? You look like, look at the outfits. Stand up. You got puffy, well, not everybody's seen it. It's like from the Paris Hilton's dogs collection. Channeling my Michael Moore and alternative Mel Gibson here. You know, I lived in LA for a little bit. So I have this reoccurring gala, the fantasy of being at a religious gala. Not any ordinary one. This one has, you know, paparazzi, the works. I imagine it being the Oscars. That's not that important. And then I started thinking about like how cool it would be to have all these famous religious people at the Oscars and honor them rather than necessarily the actors and actresses. So I imagine Julian of Norwich, the middle-aged mystic decked out in Armani. I see the Buddha getting out of a limo. In the corner, Joan Rivers is standing next to our very own Margaret Fuller interviewing her. He showed up with the baby face Thoreau. And there I'm there for some unknown reason. I imagine myself giving the church father Origen one of those hip, you know, hugs that they do and thanking him for being so brave for pushing sort of universal salvation back in the day. And in this daydream, I've been commissioned to present Jesus with a Lifetime Achievement Award. It's a nice fantasy. I get to be self-inflated and a gadfly, and from the safety of the 21st century, I get to align myself with the history of soulful heretics. But I also, if I think about this, I didn't want to linger it, right? Like, think about the moment we're in right now. I want this moment to be meaningful. Before the millions watching, I want to raise questions before our primarily Christian nation, questions too frequently asked. Just how did Christianity get so conservative when our honored guest was such a revolutionary? We all likely know a little bit of the story of how Jesus gets turned into the authorities, right? But I want to ask how many who can account the tale of Gethsemane can answer how Jesus got turned into the authority. I want to, on the Oscar stage with my tux on, I want to raise the question of how did humanity so consistently mistake Jesus, who's an expression of the universe's divine stream, for its source. I think about poignantly pounding the podium and saying it's bad theology to give Jesus or his Father all the credit when something good happens, but yet have it everything be our fault when things go wrong. I want to say that to the millions watching and all over the world. I want to thank Jesus, who I begin to imagine there as flowing locks tussled just perfectly by the stylists backstage, that he would nod in agreement with me. But part of me wonders if the church boy would dare say some of these things, though I wrote it. This daydream has some legs. I want to use my 15 minutes of fame to voice to the struggle of our UU forebears and all those heretics, the Donatists and Pelagians and Arians and Socinian brothers and sisters who were so courageous for their own interpretation of Jesus as being a human with those powers back in the day. It's a rare occasion the world watches the Oscars now, and I know that I can't waste this moment. I want to capture the honor and anxiety of a former Methodist theology professor of mine who stood in our class in divinity school, and she confided that she spent half the week elated by her role teaching all of us and passing down the Christian tradition, and the other half depressed by her support for a church that locks up truth in such tight packages. I want to say something that will heal the many painful memories of the church's history of hypocrisy across all the ages, all the oppression. And I want to use this moment to speak to those many within our own tradition who, in leaving their Christian roots behind them, which so many of us have yet to sort of replace or mourn the loss of Jesus in their life. I want to remind the audience that despite all the corruption from the likes of Calvin and Jonathan Edwards and all the distortions that are there today, that Jesus remains a gem of an icon. Washing over me is a cocktail of love and anxiety and prophetic righteousness and fear. I'm going to be on the stage of the Oscars. I'd like to say that even though many of my UU brothers and sisters would feel resigned to stand at the back of the line of those who admire Jesus, they might not stop to stand up for the Jesus they do believe in and are moved by. I feel this gut need to walk the line between being prophetic, paying tribute, using humor without being offensive, some balance thereof. My short speech is coming together in my head. It's kind of a little bit of a roast just to lighten the mood for everyone who's so somber about religious matters. Kind of a long past eulogy for a guy who lost his life at 30. Jesus was stripped of his life somewhere around 30, if the story is in any way true. Finally, the big night arrives, and Jesus, my hero, is sitting next to me up on one of those, panels, not unlike the Last Supper, interestingly enough. Peter is there, Mary Magdalene is there, Paul's there. And to start lightening up, I begin to look over at Jesus, who's just sitting right over here, and trying to come up with something funny, something to break the ice. I say, Jesus, you are the only friend big enough to have both a major religion and a swear word named after you. And then follow it with just another Jew in Hollywood tonight. Yet this friend of ours who's just about celebrated his 2000th birthday, yet there you are, in all the press photos, you look so European. But then I want to get serious. I want to pause and say, although I appreciate all the nice things that John and Aquinas had to say, we have before ourselves here today a man who experienced and delivered so much joy that it's understandable that so many in this panel would confuse him as the source of their delight, when really he just pointed to how to get there. You were so impressive, I want to say to Jesus, that they granted you a virgin birth, but it wasn't your birth that transformed the world, but your life. For me, beyond all the glitz and glamour of this grand stage and all that we see tonight, all the way you've been portrayed in your press packets, the Gospels, and the big screen lately, you're always in a movie. The key to properly remembering you, my friend, is to bear in mind that your goal in life was to bring good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, and to make the blind see. Although you've always spoken to us only through your admirers, really, across these generations, I've found you a friend, a model, and an ally in the simple struggle to challenge what I accept about myself and about the social blindness of my age, every age. You truly are, as UU minister Stephen Fritchman said, who led the LA church through the dark McCarthy era, that you are a man who by precept and example gave the most disenfranchised a sense of their dignity, and you showed us the near potential of human existence. Jesus, you are thought of as apocalyptic in so many people's eyes because you're expected in a rush of power to come back and usher in the end times. But the true meaning of apocalyptic, and like your real gift, is to lay things bare, to expose what's true. You are powerful because you gave it all away. And because you are the only central major figure in a religion to have ever been executed. Think about that, everyone. You sitting here, you at home, Jesus. Like the rest of us, Jesus was stripped of his ego by the world. My friend, turning to him next to me, that's what I most love about you. See, for all the miracles we've heard about, the moment in your lifetime of achievements that most impressed me was that night in Gethsemane when faced with the biggest challenge of your life, presumably knowing what was headed your way, you were human enough to beg that that burden be taken away from you and to have that captured in print. That's big. Courageous enough to also face what seemed essential. And isn't that really in all of our imperfect lives, for you sitting at home on television, sitting in this grand ballroom, anyone can really ask of themselves? I think so. Each time I hear that Gethsemane story, still a whole week or most of a week away from us here on Palm Sunday, no offense to the writer in the Gospel of John, no offense to Paul or any others who saw you as more like a friendly ghost down on a temporary visit. When I hear your story, I face the bold truth that there really is no mystical solution. That to be fully human, I must accept the suffering of the world, head held high. Jesus, watching the small fragments of your life that others have passed down to us, I don't get all the truth and solace or comfort that I ever need. I don't. But I do learn that the path to strength, and I suppose something resembling salvation or enlightenment, is not to be found in fancy words of wisdom or purity laws or even titles. To me, you said in words and deeds that the key to life is to see your existence broadly enough that you do not differentiate your fate from your neighbor. No offense to all those glamour models out there in the audience, or Paris Hilton, but that's hot. Only remembering that it's possible for me to avoid retreating to false comforts, but to live as joyfully as I can with the misery and injustice of the world and attend to it is important to me. At this time in our humanity's life, in our country's life, Jesus, you remind me to be the kind of warrior that doesn't make the news, but to be first a soldier of our own character. Watching you reminds me that the first act of heroism is the covert act of quietly, lovingly performing the reconnaissance on our own shadowy places in our heart. Maybe I get you wrong. Maybe your power really is more cosmic than your character. I don't know. But to me in this age, and I know a lot about the damage we're doing to the environment, the starving children, the landmines, the oppression of LGBTQ folks, the economic inequality, for me, you are an important line of defense that I continue to try to care and act on what I care about. As Emerson, our dear Emerson, for any Unitarians watching tonight, the very person who probably dragged Unitarians away from the Christian tradition, Emerson said, your life book remains the best document of the power of character we have. I like that. And from you, my friend, I learned that spirituality is not being taken up to the top of the mountaintop. Not everyone can do that. But living with the full impact of the situation with as much love and care as I can muster. Being in relationship with you gives me more courage to make my own life not molded into complacency, but driven into action and the goal of bringing the kingdom you so often spoke about. Mustering up the energy it takes to try to make earth heaven, which I think is our only task. You taught me that a life well lived will not guarantee me comfort, but will call me to joy and grief and a great purpose that burns at the core of my being. And maybe for all here tonight, here in a world unmistakably fractured, and the future depends on our ability to face trouble without getting lost in self-delusion and false comforts. So you, my dear friend Jesus, are not my only religious confidant anymore, but you are my oldest. Congratulations on a lifetime Achievement Award. Amen. What happens next? I think we sing. We sing. What do we sing, Olga? I wish I knew how. 151, I believe. There we go. Stand as you are willing and are able, stand in spirit, if not in body. I wish I knew how we could be free. I wish I would always be I wish I could say all the things I could say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear. World to hear. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear. For the whole world to hear. I wish I could share all the love in my heart. Remove all the walls to keep us apart. That hymn should be awarded the poorest laid out hymn in the hymnal. Nancy Wood says, hold on to what is good even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to my hand even when I've gone away from you. Go in peace. Be peace. Don't forget our speaker on Wednesday night. If you can make it, be great. Nuclear war has fallen off the radar screen, and I think we need to make sure to turn it happen.
Are we all on for a conversation?
Yeah, this is Audrey.
Hi,
Hi, this is Corinne. Yeah, I'm here.
this is Dick.
How are you doing, Dick?
What's that?
How are you doing?
Well, I have this devil of a cold which seems to get worse and worse. I don't understand it, but anyway, there we are.
Sorry to hear that. Audrey, how's everything with you?
Oh, it's okay. You know, the weather is not kind to the joints.
That's right.
Yeah, I know, it's true.
So,
Been a lot of rain.
yeah, and very cold and raw. So, sometimes the energy level gets a little low.
Yes.
And do you feel that in your students, Corinne?
No, I don't. I usually don't see their energy level being low at all. It's kind of the opposite, actually. But thanks for asking. I just was I yeah, I've been this has probably been one of the hardest jobs I've ever had, I have to say. I mean, I've had some challenging jobs, but I just realized that 3 of the students that I'm working with are on what's called behavioral plans, which means that there's been some kind of a behavioral intervention. Um, and that's just it's just really hard. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe it except that they they can be kind of dysregulated, the kids who are on the behavioral plans,
Mhm.
possibly because they have some trauma in their personal histories, and then they get dysregulated, and then it's like contagious in the class, and then I get dysregulated. It's like it's
Yeah.
really it's kind of hard, to be honest. It's just very tiring.
Well, their energy affects everybody else.
Yes. It does. And it's been very difficult because in one class I have 4 kids who are, who could really use and benefit from learning. And I spend so much time trying to deal with this one child out of the class. And at one point I thought, well, I'll just give up my prep period and take him on separately. But yeah, that's not going to happen. And so he's going to be in the class, and I just have to find ways miraculously to work with this situation.
Because otherwise you lose the other students.
Yeah, I do. And so I don't know. And there's no real answer. So I'm not going to get to teach him separately. So he is going to stay in the class. Um, Yeah, it's really, I guess it's been very eye-opening. I mean, public school teachers, they face a lot of challenges, they have a lot of expectations placed on them. But, there's I just was trying to figure out, I have another student who's from China. He's in the 4th grade, and he can't really, he's really not very interested in learning English. I mean, he he has a lot of he's very interested in his classmates, and he's also very interested in some students who have challenges, who might have autism or other challenges. So he's got a lot of strengths. Socially, I would say he has a lot of strengths. He's just not that interested in learning per se, like the academic aspects of learning English. So I don't know. I just was doing research online. I bought these little canvases from Ocean State Job Lot for students to draw on so that they could feel valued in terms of their artwork. They're just little canvases that you could hang up on a wall for $2. And they had all these wooden pieces that came with them. And I had no idea what they were. And so we opened them up. I opened them up with the 1st graders, and we couldn't figure out what to do with them. So I was just going to throw them away. But then I figured I could use them to write words on, and pronouns and verbs and punctuation, because this 4th grader is like a tactile learner. Like, he likes to build and touch things. And I thought, oh, we can build sentences. And then I was trying to figure out, how many pieces do I need for all the pronouns, punctuation, frequently used verbs? And then I found on Amazon that they have those types of things already made. So I was just looking at those, but it's one thing to just have that pre-printed, and it's another thing to kind of make them yourself or have him make them, to get like more involved. That's a deep dive into my early morning coffee thoughts with you. Probably too much information.
So if I don't mind, I changed the subject. Yesterday,
Sure.
we went to Les's brother's house thinking that we were celebrating his girlfriend's birthday, and it ended up being their wedding.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, they got married, and all the family was there, her family and all, because everyone thought they were celebrating her 60th birthday, which isn't on Easter, but they surprised us, and his daughter got permission to be a justice of the peace for 1 day, so she married them.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was really precious and so perfect just to do it that way. But everyone was so surprised, because when they greeted us, they were just dressed in regular clothes. And then they wanted us to gather, and they said to take a group picture. But what it really was is they came down and they came out, and they were all dressed up, and it was obvious this was to be a wedding. So that was really a nice surprise.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds very special.
Yes, yes. They had met in September, and I guess he had really engaged to her after asked her to be engaged about a month ago, which nobody really knew. And so this was a total surprise, but how creative, it's just really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how old is he? If she's 60, did you say? How old is
Yeah,
his
and Les's brother is the youngest of Les's crew, and I think he's around 63.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And
So
how many people were at the impromptu or surprise wedding?
oh, I'm never good at that.
Yeah.
A good large number,
Oh,
but
nice.
everyone was just, and they had wanted to have it outside, and they had a
Yeah.
whole tent and everything ready
Oh,
for it.
wow.
And then, of course, we get 6 inches of snow.
That was crazy yesterday, wasn't it?
So all in all, it was a very surprising day.
That was.
What
That was
fun.
full of multiple surprises.
Right.
What fun. Yeah.
So,
Nice.
Dick, Yeah, colds are not a mystery. You know, it used to just be a simple cold. Nowadays, because of all the viruses and stuff, you don't know what to call it, but just it takes time.
Yeah, well, the irony is that we all, I was fighting it off for some time, but it started with the rally, standing out there in the rain
Oh,
for
yeah.
so long that first Andrew and then Celia, and then Andrew's cousin, who was with us, has been his shared living provider for a week. And then we have all had it with different variations. He had a sinus infection and got some antibiotics, the cousin, and he was fine. And Andrew bounced right back too, but Celia's still hacking. And anyway, you're right that allergies and the pollen season supposedly, because of climate change, is going to be lasting much longer. So who knows what's happening in my head, but it certainly is not, doesn't feel normal. Maybe it's brain fog. Maybe I have COVID brain fog or something. I don't know. It's hard to know.
It is. It's yeah, but it was a surprise to wake up yesterday and look out and see all white.
I'll say.
Did I
And
just
to
kind of
wake
miss
up
the
this
summer?
morning and not have snow, I mean. So
Yeah, the mystery.
Well, I have to say that I enjoyed being in my bathrobe for the service today. It
Yeah.
was kind of cozy to be at home.
he
Because
is well. Yeah.
it's kind of like a raw, cold day, like you were saying. But I miss the people. And so it's nice to even talk just with you and Audrey. It just makes you feel like you're at least having some connection,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, connections are important. Yeah, it's that is the beauty of Zoom from that perspective. Um, and actually, it was the sound and all was much better today. Last Sunday, it kept going in and out and couldn't hear. But
Today the service was very clear
yeah, it was.
and the pictures looked so good. Like the videography looked really good. And yeah, I don't know why there's such variation from service to service. I don't get why.
I'm not a tech person, so I don't get it either. But and it was an interesting, whatever you want to call it, sermon, homily, sharing, whatever. He always has an interesting slant on how to present things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw the announcement, I thought, I don't think this is going to work, but I think it did.
Yeah.
I think it was very clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to say honestly that one challenge I've had with it just sometimes feels like when it comes to talking about Christianity or Christ, I don't know. I feel like the Unitarians work really hard to be inclusive and respectful of all religions. And then sometimes I feel as though it seems to be hard for people to have the same level of reverence towards Christianity for whatever reason. And just the teachings of, I guess I just feel like in terms of Unitarian Universalism, like for me, what would be interesting to hear about in the same way that we, we think about Judaism or Islam or Buddhism is sort of, yeah, like in terms of like liberation theology and what that has to say. I don't know. It just sometimes I just feel like that people have a hard time talking about, looking at the values and the positive elements of Christianity. And I don't know if I'm making any sense,
Oh,
but
no, I having been, certainly I don't consider myself not Christian. Um, and with my background, I have always felt that I sometimes I think people who come to you who have been Christian have had a negative experience and they bring that anger or negativity with them. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that's some of it. Um, but yeah, it is true. You don't feel always as comfortable to say something. And I do value when the ministers are comfortable enough to bring in scripture or to talk about, whether you believe in the divinity of Jesus, he was someone who existed and his teachings, and he was a rebel, you know. So it's all depends on how you look at it. But yeah, Catholicism as a man-made religion is probably what people are against, but the spirituality of it is very much proven. So I do understand what you're saying, and I have always felt that we'll talk very easily about doing a Seder or that type of thing, but not comfortable in other aspects of Christianity. So I don't know about
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like to be specific, like I think about in my own life, I was connected to a Catholic bishop who was one of the he was actually the youngest the youngest person to be ordained a bishop. And what happened was he was asked to go quiet some priests down who were protesting the war in Vietnam and Washington. And he ended up joining them in their protest. And so he had this long trajectory of really sincere social justice work, just an amazing person. And as a result, he was very much minimized within the Catholic hierarchy. But they could never rescind his bishop title from him. So he continued to do his work. But I think about like within Catholicism, like liberation theology and how that sort of embodies talking the talk and walking the walk. And a lot of that to me embodies some of the values of Unitarian Universalism in terms of respect and dignity for all people. Um, and I guess I just wish that there could be some thoughtful reflection or inclusion of these aspects of Christianity. I mean, Christianity is not a monolithic experience, right? There's all these different elements, and it's almost this like this black and white thinking where people um, are not necessarily open to learning about it in the same way that we are encouraged to be tolerant and open to other world religions.
well, I always feel, it's black and white, but most of life is lived in the gray area. And that's where the openness comes in. And,
yeah,
you know, I, you know, I think open yourself. You have your own basic foundation that no one can take from you, but to listen to others. I mean, as I've learned in life to do that, I've been so enriched by different, thoughts and writings and leaders that if I didn't know it myself, I would have never known certain things. And I can keep my basic foundation, but just to enrich it from what other people say, other religions, other ways of looking at something, it's I think that for me is the better way to live. And it's brought me into many, many different aspects that I never would have if I had closed my mind off and said, oh, Catholicism is the one true faith. It's not, it's so Yeah, so I totally do understand what you're saying.
It's interesting though, because I haven't heard a lot of talk about liberation theology in the Catholic Church, although for a while there was. And I think the Pope himself kind of was of that, that kind of thinking, wasn't he initially? But that has brought tremendous backlash within the Catholic Church, I understand. Some far right groups even wanting to go back to a Latin mass and all that sort of stuff. Much more conservative
Yeah.
wing in Catholicism as in life now. And it's very interesting to me because Celia and I have been part of a couple of the Interfaith Alliance Zooms. And I don't know if you know the group or, but they've been very interesting because they really do attempt to bring a lot of different religions together to talk about where we are now and what we can do. And so at one session, there was a Unitarian representative, and I think it was probably someone quite high up in the UUA. And the leader of the group, who seems like a delightful man with lots of integrity, said, well, we're so happy to have Unitarians with us. These are not his exact words, but he said something to the effect of, sometime we feel that Unitarians really reject Christianity rather than invite us into the mix, sort of. And the Unitarian person said, well, no, those days are over. We're all committed to the same values and ideals, and we're eager to work with the interfaith community. And that was kind of a surprise to me to have that right just out in public, and her statement as well. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very interesting,
I was
Dick. See
impressed.
that? Yeah, that's what I guess that's what I'm talking about. I feel like yeah, I don't obviously feel like there should be any like I don't know how to say this word, proselytizing in the
Right.
Unitarian Church, but what attracts me to the Unitarian Church is the kind of respect that is applied and appreciation for all world religions, for all belief systems. And I guess when it comes to, Catholicism or other types of Christianity, um, there's just this discomfort, what I perceive to be like a level of discomfort. And I guess I don't know. I mean, honestly, I guess I don't know how to describe it. But like, even when they were like, and I'm just going to give my own personal opinion because I don't think you or Audrey will have any issues with me sharing my opinion. But even when they did the play, I I felt somewhat uncomfortable, even with like, Jesus, always being portrayed talking with his mouth full and things like that. I just I just don't think that we would add that kind of, I don't know what you would even call that. Like, if you want to call that comic relief, I found that to be kind of disrespectful in the sense that this is a figure, that is revered by so many people in the world, and not someone to be, I don't know, just kind
Yeah.
of making that kind of joke about. I just, that made me feel uncomfortable.
Maureen, I did for me too.
Well, and if it's of any interest to you, at the end of our last rehearsal, one of the uh, actors brought that up and said, I really feel that in the whole thing, a lot of the major spiritual people were elevated or acknowledged or whatever, but that Christ was, he didn't even, but I think he said one person was certainly not. And there was a sort of a grudging, I think, agreement on the part of many of us. I don't think Steve sort of saw it that way, but I think he really was thinking theatrically, wanting comic relief. I think you're absolutely right about the role that he assigned to Jesus in the play. I think was maybe a little misguided. And anyway, for what it's worth, you're not the only ones who were a little uncomfortable with that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, like, I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about, in terms of like that comment that was shared with you, Dick, about Unitarians and Christianity. I mean, to me, you would never have Unitarians do that with like, say, Allah, or a major head. I mean, it's just, I guess it's just it if there were people in that audience, as there were people outside of our immediate you know community, that could have been you know that could have been considered offensive, I
Pretty
guess.
off-putting, sure.
Yeah. And certainly,
know-
I thought about myself, like, I was supposed to play, I think, one of the characters, and I
Right.
thought to myself, like, at first I thought this was going to be videotaped on the Zoom channel, and I really didn't feel like I wanted to be associated with that kind of caricature of somebody. Like, I mean, I appreciated the play and the dialogue and the effort, and I thought it was very interesting. But there were some parts, like in terms of the portrayal of Jesus, that I thought, weren't really in weren't weren't really respectful, sort of, or in good taste, or whatever you want to call it, and could be considered offensive to people.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I wonder if a lot of the strong anti-Catholic particular feeling doesn't come from the connection, the missionary efforts and the connection with colonialism, particularly the Spanish in the New World. If that isn't kind of like an extra dimension, because Mormons are missionaries, and a lot of the Baptists and Methodists have little missionary, but they're and here is where I don't know enough about history, I guess, but they seem to be sort of more locally focused, and they're not trying to set up their religions in other countries the way the Catholics did, and that may be a big part of some of the sense. I mean, the Inquisition and all this stuff, which is pretty horrendous. And so I don't know, but anyway, it's really an interesting kind of area we've gotten into, and it does make me think that talking more about talking more about Catholicism might be an interesting little group discussion, and another one would be the social activism of the Catholic Church, and why that hasn't caught on more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dick, don't get me wrong. Like, I have plenty of challenges with the Catholic Church. I mean, that's why I'm attending the Unitarian Church, right?
Yeah.
I have lots of issues with the Catholic Church. But what I'm challenged by is, though I reject, aspects of the Catholic Church, I still hold a level of like, I still am like respectful towards people who choose to participate in that religion the same way I would be towards people who participate in Judaism or who, or who practice Buddhism or any of the world religions. What I'm saying is that I just don't appreciate, like, within the Unitarian, within the ways in which I've seen levels of sort of what I perceive to be some level of disrespect towards.
Oh, no. I think you made yourself clear, and I don't feel that you're being at all unreasonable about what you're saying and seeing. I think
Right. And I guess the last point is because Unitarians are so open-minded and so, I just would like to sort of be able to think about, not having this one view on Christianity or one view of Catholicism, because within Catholicism, as you were saying, there are these different elements. And like this liberation theology, you're right, it's not like mainstream Catholicism at all. It's not, but it is a very interesting aspect of Catholicism. And to me, it has some parallels with Unitarian Universalism in the sense that, it's very much about social justice. It's very much about, looking at systems of oppression, and being not in denial about these realities. So it's just to me, it's just, I guess, just thinking about that there's so much, and I just hate to see any religion being stereotyped, kind of, or I don't know what you would say it, like, sort of, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a hard thing to articulate, actually, it's sort of, it's kind of hard to entirely articulate, but yeah.
I think you do a better job than you think than you.
Oh,
But
thanks. And I guess I'm just speaking to that perception that
Yeah.
you witnessed from somebody in the
Yeah,
interfaith community.
I found it shocking when I heard that.
Yes. Yeah.
That he would gently say, you Unitarians haven't really been very friendly to us, and to have. But again, I'm not quoting him as well. Let's see. But anyhow, well, I have a text from Sai Baba.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to have to.
Well, thanks for the theological discussion today.
You're welcome.
This was
All
great,
right.
great
See you
fun.
guys again, and have a good week. Take
Feel
care.
better, Dick. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Whoops, how do we do this now?